But in the meantime, I'll hand over to Chris from Champion Contractors, who can kick us off.
Right, thanks very much, Sam. So welcome and thanks for attending this afternoon. What, as kind of Sam's pointed out there, what we've been asked to do really is to give you an overview of what your payment options are, and also then look in a little bit more detail about what an umbrella company is and what it can offer you basically. So we'll be no more than about 25-30 minutes. We've got a colleague on the line as well, Ian from our financial planning team, who will also be able to give you some more detail about the salary sacrifice option, which is something that's resonating with a lot of contractors, particularly if they're having to use the umbrella company option. So quick introduction from myself. My name's Chris Bloor and I'm the Compliance and Assurance Manager at Champion Contractors. Champion Contractors were formed in 2009 and we're part of a bigger chartered accountancy group, essentially, that have been around, well, we're celebrating our 50th year this year. So different to some of the payroll providers out there that have accountancy services. We've always done that, and when we branched out into the specific contractor world, as I said, back in 2009. As part of that, or the reason behind that, was to support guys like yourself. We recognised that contractors need a little bit of a different service compared to what a normal high street accountant can provide, but also using that skill and experience that a high street accountant can bring to you as well, basically. So it's a good mix of both worlds. And one of the things that we were keen to do at the outset was to ensure that all of our contractors were I-35 compliant. And we've always had a process of assessment for our accountancy contractor clients, which back in 2017 was then used by Morson for some of their clients. And on the back of that, we came together to form a partnership to raise awareness of these changes that were coming in, which should have been last year, obviously. But again, through that and through the support that we've offered over the last decade, we've been offered this opportunity to be their featured partner for umbrella services. So that's a little bit about why we are here today, why you're listening to us, so to speak. But I'm going to move quickly on to payment options. And as I said, as Sam said, some people here will have received their determination. And that could be inside or outside. If it's inside, you might be appealing that. Or you might be just saying, right, well, what are my options? So if it is outside, then the legislation obviously applies, and you can it doesn't apply, and you can continue to use your limited company, basically. And we all know the benefit of that is the tax efficiency, the retaining the control of your income, basically. So if you have got an outside determination, fantastic. Morson will be in touch probably with the new contractors and confirming all that very shortly. If you are inside, or you think you're going to be inside, then the legislation is obviously going to apply, and you've ultimately got three options. I'm going to go into a lot of detail about two of those today, which is the agency pay-as-you-earn and the umbrella pay-as-you-earn. But there is a third option to continue to get paid through your limited company, which is called a deemed payment. Now, in that respect, the Morson would be responsible there for taking care of all the tax and national insurance, all the employer costs in that circumstance. Okay, so it doesn't usually work out as being cost effective unless you've got 3 or 4 clients that you can use those. And again, if they're outside of I-35, those assignments, you can use those to offset your accountancy costs and your insurance costs, because otherwise they're coming straight out of your earned income, basically. So they're the 3 options. As I said, we're going into a bit more detail about the agency pay-as-you-earn versus umbrella company now. And what you're seeing on the screen are essentially the headline things to look out for. These are the real differences in terms of what it means to yourself. The first is employment status, okay? And ultimately, if you decided to go pay-as-you-earn with Morson, you would just be issued with a kind of a temporary worker agreement, and you would be a deemed employee for tax purposes only. So it's not full employment, which, as you can see from the slide there, it is with the umbrella company. Okay, you get a full contract of employment, all the statutory benefits and requirements that are associated with that as well. So that facilitates a lot more than what you could get if you were just on a temporary worker agreement. It really comes into play with things like mortgages or financial references, etc., because it's more likely that you'll be successful in that if you did have a full contract of employment. Okay, from an administration perspective, then not a lot really changes between your timesheets, I would say. Obviously, if you're not using a limited company, you've not got to worry about that. To get your hours or days approved, you do exactly as you're doing now, basically. That doesn't change, okay? It's a simple timesheet submission or an approval from the client. The same would apply with ourselves, okay? And ultimately, Morson are a self-billing agency. So they would let ourselves know, or any umbrella company know, on the Wednesday, so when you get your remittance now, we ourselves then provide you with a payslip via your online portal that you get on the Thursday, and then your payment clears in your account on the Friday morning. So all very, very straightforward. In a bit more detail on the payments, then for both options, they're pay as you earn. Okay, so all of your income tax, all of your national insurance deductions are going to get taken at source. With Morson, the option would be to get paid weekly, okay, as you are now. With ourselves, we offer that option of paid weekly or monthly, because we do know that some contractors, they're only taking money out of the company on a monthly basis anyway. So that would be your option. And again, that kind of works if you're going to look at the salary sacrifice option, which Ian will talk about later. But ultimately, there is a distinct difference there in your options. There is, with an umbrella company, the potential to claim the tax back on your expenses. That is subject to an assessment, which we would go into a bit more detail on a bespoke illustration for you. Okay, so they're the key things. They're the headline differences, if you like. Now, looking at what an umbrella company is, this slide here, you see that there's a link on the bottom there, and everyone's going to get a copy of the slides after this. So do have a look. This is HMRC's interpretation, and the reason for doing this is we often in our industry are faced with questions about are umbrella companies approved, or do HMRC know about umbrella companies, etc. This is their, not definition, this is their interpretation. This is in their employment status manual, okay, which outlines their understanding of how it works, and it's pretty accurate. Okay, what it details is the relationship, okay, which is accurate. It details the awareness of the deductions that are taken, so the employer's national insurance contributions, holiday pay elements, expenses, and apprenticeship levy. But ultimately, they know that at the end of the day, they're getting the pay as you earn that they should get. They're not going to approve anyone, or any umbrella company, but neither do they approve any employment business, any kind of employer in that respect. So we wanted to kind of put that up there just to give you some reassurance of an umbrella company. It isn't something that you should be scared of, but we are going to go into a bit of detail about those organisations that claim to be umbrella companies that aren't. Okay, so just to kind of drill down on the contractual relationship, when you use an umbrella company, you become an employee. So in this scenario here, you're the worker, okay, and you have a contract of employment with the umbrella company, which is ourselves. Okay. The umbrella company has a contract for services with the agency, and the agency, in this case Morson, has that same agreement with the end hirer. So there's no relationship essentially between our umbrella company and the end client, okay, and you are our employee in that respect. And ultimately, that allows for certain things to be done in terms of the relationship. It allows you to have joined up employment history, okay. You're not going to have fragmented pay throughout different assignments that you might work on. In terms of peace of mind, then everything will go through the umbrella company, so there'll be no requirement for a self-assessment unless you've got any additional income. One of the things that we're keen to point out, because we have done this over the years, is that we are there for any kind of HR advice and any needs in that respect. So if there's any grievances with the client, you're not going to them, you're not an employee of them, you come to ourselves, and then we'll take that up and go through the chain in that respect. And again, because of the nature of this relationship, it does allow for the right individuals to be able to claim back the tax on their travel and subsistence expenses. But again, that is subject to an individual assessment, and it's done on a case-by-case basis. Okay, so that's the contractual relationship. That's what this type of way of working can offer to you in that respect. Okay, so you will no doubt have either be speaking to or will be looking to speak or potentially speak to some other providers, okay, as you would with things like insurance, to get a few quotes. What I would suggest is that for any umbrella company that you speak to, please make sure they give you a full illustration which you can easily understand, I suppose. It is slightly different with an umbrella company in the fact that how the payment is processed, because of that contractual relationship, the money that is paid from the agency is the umbrella companies to begin with. Okay, so that there's an invoice for that amount, and then once we've taken into consideration the employer costs, that then leaves you with your gross for tax, which we then take the deduction. So how that realistically should be shown in any kind of example is with an invoice section. So you see here, we've got an example of 37 hours at £30 per hour. You've got the income that's come in. Okay, you've got the various deductions for apprenticeship levy, employers NI, and then company margin, which is the fee that the umbrella company takes. You then have your payslip section. Okay, so there's two distinct areas. If the umbrella company is not providing you with that, then just question that, because it could be that there's some smoke and mirrors involved there, because you should clearly see what is the umbrella company's and then what is yours. Okay, you can work through this payslip to see what your take-home pay is, but just to point out a few things, again, asking the question of these if you're speaking to any other umbrella companies, is that most will show your hours by the minimum wage. The reason for that really is we need to show that you are paying at least the minimum wage there. And that can come into play if you are claiming in expenses, because you can't go below that level. But more likely, if you're putting lots into a salary sacrifice pension, you can't go below that level. You'll see your hours at minimum wage. Don't be put off by that. You'll see holiday pay, and holiday pay can be paid or retained. Okay, in this example, it's being paid out to you, as most of our employees prefer. And then we have this amount as an additional taxable amount. Some companies will show that as the discretionary bonus, okay, which is fine. And in the contract, it will be a discretionary bonus. But because it's discretionary, I'm not saying that they won't pay it out, but I would question as to why it's labelled up as that. Because in theory, they may not pay that out. And this all came to a head last year when the coronavirus job retention scheme came in, and certain umbrella companies using that method of payment were worried, and in some cases didn't use that scheme because they could only pay on the minimum wage. Okay, so if they used it, they paid out on the minimum wage. That wasn't right. We've never done that, and ultimately we were able to very quickly get our employees paid. Now we're hoping that that's not going to go, come round again. But just in case, just ask that question as well. So that's the kind of example that you're looking to get. Okay, and in the follow-up that we're going to send to you this afternoon, you're going to get a payslip calculator. Okay, which you can use. You can put your hours in. You can put the agreed rate that you're going to get, and that's going to then calculate this type of payslip for you. If you're using salary sacrifice, again, you can include that in there as well. So that's what you're looking for, a genuine umbrella company. Okay, we're also going to go into a bit of detail here about those companies that say they're an umbrella company but they're not. Okay, and I think any organisation that you speak to that is advertising 90%, let's say, or that IR35 compliant or approved by HMRC, all of that means nothing. If someone says you can take home 90%, then they're clearly lying. Run the other way. Now, those type of schemes usually, if not always, end up to be one of those that I've said on there, some kind of employment benefit trust, some type of loan scheme arrangement, or the more recent one is what's known as a mini umbrella company. Okay, HMRC have clarified all of those as non-compliant models. However, they don't go after the promoter of the scheme. The onus is on you, the contractor, to make sure you're paying the right amount of tax and national insurance, basically. Okay, and if you are found to be in one of those schemes, then ultimately that you will be forced to pay that back, plus interest and sometimes penalties. Now, the serious side of this is that those schemes have been proliferated for the last 20 years, really since I-35 was brought in the first place. And the sad side of that is that people have been caught up in that, and people have unfortunately taken their own lives because of the amount of tax that they and penalties that they've incurred. HMRC and the Advertising Standards Agency are, I think, doing quite a good job at the moment. That they've got a promotional kind of scheme out to try and raise awareness of these type of schemes. And there's some real life stories in there that if anyone wants me to send you the link to that, then my details will be on there. I'll drop you the email. But ultimately, if anything like that comes up, please just walk away. Just put the phone down, basically. With regards to Morson, then their PSL providers are all FCSA accredited, which means, like ourselves, and unfortunately it's my job, when they come in every single year, for a company like EY or KPMG will come in, they'll be in your offices for a couple of days, they'll check all of your pay slips, like we showed you there, they'll check all of your paperwork, your contracts, any kind of expense claims, to make sure it's all done correctly. Okay, and if it's not, you lose that accreditation. If you lose that accreditation, you then can't work with agencies or agencies like Morson, because they look for that, and then they also have their own compliance on top of that, because they've got your best interest at heart, essentially. Okay, so those are the things to look out for. As I said, if you are getting calls, and I've spoken to probably 20 people this month alone that have received some kind of call or email from those type of providers, because they can see your details on Companies House, they can match details up from LinkedIn, and then they're contacting you to see if you'd be interested. Please don't go down that route. Now, in terms of what we can offer, I just want to quickly take you through this just so you can get an idea. Ultimately, this first slide, this is what we call the basics. And this is, going back to the theme, this is what you should expect from any umbrella company. Okay, but there is some commonality here between what you get with the agency as well. So it's key to kind of point that out. Okay, so as I mentioned before, with an umbrella company, you should get a full contract of employment. You shouldn't, as going back to the non-compliant providers, be given some kind of loan agreement or something that's under the jurisdiction of Maltese law or something like that, as I've seen. Okay, so full contract of employment, all your statutory payments are covered. Okay, your requirements, so SSP, holiday pay, etc., they're all included in there. You would be given access to a workplace pension. So that's one of the key kind of factors, I suppose, of employment, is that every employer has to put you into the auto enrolment scheme. Now, you can choose to come out of that should you, but you should be, if eligible, you should be given that option, basically. That's slightly different to the salary sacrifice pension scheme that we're going to talk about, but that's one of the things to see if something's genuine. I mentioned holiday pay before. Both with Morson and ourselves, you're going to have the option to have that paid or retained. Okay, and with insurances as well, you've no doubt got insurances with your limited company. When you're working via Morson or you're working via the umbrella company, those insurances are covered. Okay, with ourselves, they are inclusive of our margins. Most are, but always check, are my insurances included? And then again, the continuous employment that I mentioned before, that's what we would offer. You're doing a series of assignments, you stay with us rather than chopping and changing agencies or clients, basically. So they're the basics. Okay. In terms of the extra, then these are the kind of things that set ourselves and an umbrella company that does something similar apart from a recruitment agency. So these are kind of reward packages that we put together, similar to what you would get if you were an employee of an organization. They have kind of perk box or something like that. And we have our own reward scheme that we offer to employees. So once you pay for the first time, you'll get an email with the details of how to register. And this, again, is all included in that price. So this is something that, it couldn't be offered by an agency. It can't be supported in that respect, but we're offering it. And it covers things like your weekly shop. Okay, so you can claim cash back on that. We've all got to do it. Okay, this is a process of registering online and then claiming that cash back. That cash back can be used to spend in the portal, or you can take that out and transfer it to your bank account. So your weekly shop, things like restaurants, coffees, etc., you can all claim cash back when we can finally go back and do that. And then even some of the stores that are open now, B&Q, Currys, Whole Foods, etc., that you can claim cash back through there as well. There's also other things in there to do with well-being, mindfulness, online gyms, etc., that you can use. It's about finding a benefit in there, I suppose. And if you use them, you will earn cashback. If you don't, well, you're not getting charged any extra for that. And that's an important point, because with some companies, you will see an additional fee for these type of reward packages, okay, whether you use them or not. And it's usually that you've ticked a box in the application form or you've not unticked a box. So be mindful of that, because the usual kind of margin will be anywhere from £22 to £25 a week for an umbrella company. On average, but you then start to factor in, I'm being charged £2.50 for this, and it's slowly creeping up basically. One of the schemes that we have that is really popular with our employees is the fuel reward card. Now there is an upfront admin fee that's not charged by us, it's charged by the provider for the processing of the scheme, but that allows you as a Champion employee to benefit from reduced fuel on BP fuel stations. So the bigger savings I would point out are at kind of motorway service stations, but ultimately you can save 2 to 3p per litre just at your local BP fuel station. So again, that's, other than that admin fee, that's all included. There's no additional charge for that. And going back to the point earlier, if you're using them, you are going to save money, okay, but you're not paying anything extra, so you're not losing out in that respect either. So we then move on to the even better, okay, and this is what probably sets us apart, I think, from other umbrella companies, okay, and I'll point out some of these and we'll talk about the margins in a second. But as I said, for the right individual, for people that are not under huge amounts or highly qualified, highly skilled, etc., then we can do an assessment to see if you're eligible to claim the tax back on your expenses. That might not be on this current assignment, but it may be on the next one, and we'll do an assessment each time. Not going to go into too much detail about the salary sacrifice, but again, there's no administration fee. So we have other umbrella companies that we know will allow you to do salary sacrifice. They will probably want you to use their scheme, which we don't insist on, and they will probably charge you anywhere from £5 to £6 a week for doing that. In addition to that, we have a personal accident insurance package that covers you, which again is included in the margin. So we do see that as being charged out as an additional amount of £2.50 to £3. So when you start to factor in you've gone from £22 to £25, you're up there at kind of £35, £36 now for all of these things that we are essentially offering, as you can see there, for £18 per week. Okay, so it's kind of half the price of what you get of what you're going to get charged elsewhere. And I'm going to move on in terms of showing that those figures. So there is we do have two services. The prime pay service is what everyone goes into to begin with. Okay, if we believe that someone is eligible to claim the tax back on their expenses, then they can go into the bus pay service. That's slightly increased because that covers the cost of processing the expenses, but it also covers your self-assessment at the end of the year should you need to put any expenses through, because your expenses will be split out to mileage and daily costs and any other expenses there. As I said, it's not a given that people will get through that process, but we do have one there, and people, in the right circumstances can do that. You'll see on the screen here that there's other costs that show, so the after-tax relief, basically. We're showing those because we do know that other providers will advertise at those after-tax kind of rates. When you're speaking to umbrella companies, ask them, what will I see on my payslip? What is the amount on my payslip? Will it be £18? Will it be £25? Will it be £35, essentially? Make sure they're telling you that, because the other amount doesn't really mean anything, because any fee like ourselves, it is going to be reduced because those costs are a top-line deduction. Okay? As I mentioned before, we give you the option of being paid monthly, and on that respect, it is essentially, you would make a saving, I suppose, if it was a 5-week month, but it is just £18 times 4 in that respect. In addition to that, we are going to offer all Morson contractors, they won't be charged for any of the payments in April. So if you get paid just once on a monthly basis, there's no fee. If you get paid 4 times, then again, there's no fee. You only start paying our fees from May. And we see that as our offer to you to support Morson in the changeover for everyone, I suppose. Things are going to be obviously a bit hectic it's a big change for everyone, change from one method of payment to the other. So we see that as a way of helping out through that, and we think that it's obviously quite a good offer as well. I'm going to pass you over now to my colleague Ian, and he's going to just go through just 2 or 3 slides with regards to pension salary sacrifice, which some of you may already be doing through your limited companies. It's going to take how you can bring that into the umbrella world as well, basically. So if I can bring you in, Ian, if that's okay.
Thanks, Chris. Afternoon, everyone. As Chris says, I'm Ian, one of the independent advisors at your disposal. So what is salary sacrifice and why should you consider it? Essentially, it is the most tax efficient way that you can save towards your retirement. I've worked within the contracting world myself, so I do understand some of the pain you're going through at the minute. One of the reasons you probably became a contractor is so you could keep control of your tax affairs and obviously keep as much money as you can for yourself. This is sort of the last bastion for you to, actually achieve that. The way it works is you choose how much of your salary you actually want to redirect to your pension rather than take it as an income. So you've got a 3-pronged benefit of that. You get the normal tax and national insurance benefit, but also it's going to really reduce the amount that you pay for the employer costs as well. So it's a massive, massive saving when it comes to the taxation, etc. You're in control of how much you actually sacrifice, as I said. You have got to comply with HMRC limits of up to 40,000 per annum. However, there are circumstances where we may be able to utilise carry forward, which will then allow you to use the previous 3 tax years allowances as well. For me, another big advantage for higher earners is essentially you gain the full tax relief at source at your highest marginal rate, rather than just getting basic rate tax relief and then claiming the remainder back on your tax return. How does it work, and how does it apply to you? So Champion have kindly given you complimentary access to myself or one of my colleagues. We can have a chat, we can establish whether salary sacrifice is right for yourself or whether an alternative is more appropriate. We can also help with other financial needs, so existing pension plans, planning around any existing limited companies, etc., etc. It is really important that we do take an holistic view of your whole financial situation, because the salary sacrifice should complement any existing plans you've already got in place. So what's next? I strongly recommend you request an initial chat with myself or, as I say, a colleague. You can see the email address there on the slide. That'll just ensure that we can have a chat, you can understand the advantages and any potential disadvantages that are pertinent to you personally. Every single person on this call will have different needs, so any plan should be bespoke to you. If you have any immediate questions, please feel free to pop them on the chat, and I'll do my best to answer them at the end of the presentation. Or alternatively, as I say, pop your details to the email address there, and we can arrange an initial chat over Zoom. Thanks very much, Chris.
Thanks very much, Ian. Thank you. So just a quick summary from me, and then I'll pass you back to Sam. So as I said, the aim today was to try and give you an overview of your options and specifically the differences between agency pay as you earn and umbrella. In addition to that, obviously raise some awareness of those companies that aren't umbrella companies, to try and steer you away from those, because it will obviously end up with, if you go down that route, with issues for yourself. On top of that, hopefully I've been able to kind of highlight what we can offer for as part of our package to Morson Contractors, and really illustrate the differences between ourselves and umbrella and other umbrella providers as well. One of the overriding things that I think I see from this is to be able to pick up something that kind of resonates with you. So is that the pension salary sacrifice? Is that reward scheme? Is it, simply I want to get paid monthly and I can't do that if I'm just pay as you earn? It's about trying to find something that makes you go one way or the other, basically. And if nothing resonates, then it's agency pay as you earn. If something resonates, well, why not go down that route and we can look after you there. Ultimately, we're now coming up to the middle of February, and you can use your limited companies, as far as I'm aware, and Sam or Neil could confirm this, but up to the end of March. but there'd been no issue in getting the ball rolling now. Certainly making the decision either way of what you're going to do, whether that is pay-as-you-earn or umbrella company from April. If you have got things in your company or you're looking at salary sacrifice, we probably advise that you start that as quickly as possible. To get set up in an umbrella company, it takes 10 minutes. It's not very long, but there's then the issuing of contracts from the agency, paperwork that needs to be involved there. And then if you are thinking about salary sacrifice, then that can take a couple of weeks for the paperwork to be done and come back. And we'll then need to have that in place before we can pay you, basically. So it's starting to think about, what am I going to do? Get the ball rolling. If things do change, so let's say you put an appeal in and that does get accepted, then there's no obligation. You're not going to be classed as an employee of ourselves until the 6th of April, basically. If you don't start, you don't start. We just ask that you let us know, basically. So there's no harm in getting things done. On the back, as Sam pointed out today, we're going to send out the details of today's presentation. There's going to be an information pack on there, and it's also going to include a salary calculator. Okay, so as I said before, have a play around with that. Put your rate in, put your hours in. If you've got a salary sacrifice scheme with your limited company at the moment, or you're thinking about doing that, put some amounts in, and you can see the savings that Ian was talking about, really. That being the reduction of employment costs and the reduction of your tax in an eye, as opposed to just paying that personally, where you'd have to do a tax return and you're only going to claim the tax back in that way as well. So hopefully it's been of some use. I'm going to pass you back to Sam. And as I said, if there are any questions, pop them in the chat, or you can take yourself off mute. Thanks,
Sam. Thanks, Chris. Yeah, thanks, Chris. Thanks, Chris, and obviously Ian as well for that. Hopefully, I say we didn't want to do death by PowerPoint. We just wanted to give you a sort of an informative session about the benefits of umbrella, or the potential benefits of umbrella compared to pay as you earn, really. So if worth reiterating from a Morson perspective as well, that as Chris mentioned, under no obligations to move across if your appeal is successful, or if you wanted to continue down the limited company route. We do ask that we're mindful, obviously, we've got a lot of contractors at the moment that are in the process of transferring over. So we'd always recommend, if you can, to let us know exactly which route you are looking to choose as soon as you can, just so we can get you ahead of the queue, really, and make sure we get all the paperwork out to you in due course. We imagine that the last couple of weeks of March, everybody's going to be jumping and making those final decisions. So if you're in a position to choose a different route, either umbrella or pay as you earn, at any point from now until then, let us know and we can get something in place for you. And as Chris mentioned, if the legislation gets put back, which we don't believe it will be, or if an appeal is successful or anything like that, you're under no obligation. We can just cancel those arrangements if needs be. This is also worth pointing out that you will get a notice letter as such to your limited companies, in due course as well. That's not to say that the assignment will be ending. It's just to say that arrangement will be coming to a close, and obviously they'll be replaced by a new contract. So if you do get something like that in the next couple of months, don't be alarmed. It's just to satisfy that end of contract obligation from our side. I don't think we've had any questions in the chat function. Is there anything that people wanted to raise now at all? No, I don't think we've got any questions, Chris. I don't think there's anything that you wanted to cover in addition.
No, I think one of the things that we did a similar session last week, and it wasn't a question that was asked online, it came up afterwards, basically. And it was a lot of people on this call will be using limited company to the end of March and then going umbrella or pay as you earn from the 6th of April, basically. And the question was with regards to HMRC and retrospective action. And ultimately, it's been clarified on a number of occasions that HMRC are not necessarily, or won't be open, I shouldn't say not necessarily, that they won't be opening new inquiries based on a contractor being deemed by the client has been inside after the 6th of April compared to them being outside before on the 5th of April, let's say. They've put that in some of their manuals and some of their guidance. Obviously, we had this same scenario back in 2017, and they've confirmed that they didn't open any cases on the back of that or any new cases. Indeed, to cover themselves off, they're essentially saying they will only look into something if they believe that there's been fraudulent activity, okay, which, as far as I'm aware, it is a very high bar that they've needed to say to start that process. We've got to remember as well why they're doing this is that they don't have the resource to manage the process. And ultimately, that's why they're getting the end client to make these decisions. And probably the end client doesn't want to make the decision. Okay, they'd rather it was left with yourselves, because it is an individual tax matter at the end of the day. But I just wanted to raise that I personally don't think that there's any risk to you staying in that same role from the 6th of April. But if anyone wants to email me, I can send you the link to where they've said that on the most recent occasion. And if you wanted to have a further chat about that, then more than happy to do that as well.
Brilliant. Thanks, Chris. And obviously, from a Morson perspective, if you do have any questions about the process from our side, any questions that have been raised on the call that you don't want to ask in an open forum like this, myself, Neil, or your local Morson representative are always on hand to answer those. So do give us a call if there's anything that arises that you want some clarification on as well. Is there any final questions before we end the session, guys? I think we'll take the silence as everyone's happy, Chris.
Okay.
But yeah, thanks very much everybody for attending. As I say,